The vast observation deck of the Krathos flagship Eternal Dominion offered an unparalleled view of the battlefield to come. Supreme Commander Vazix stood with his 4 arms clasped behind his back, golden scales gleaming under the starlight as he studied the holographic display of human space. The edges of his mouth curled into what his species considered a smile, though to human eyes, it would have appeared more like a predatory snarl. Primitive technology, predictable formations, and painfully obvious defensive positions, Vazix announced to his bridge crew, his voice carrying the distinctive metallic resonance characteristic of the Krathos species. These humans don't even possess proper gravitational manipulation drives. They're still using fusion propulsion like children playing with toys. Behind him, his senior tactical officer, Nexera, brought up detailed scans of the human fleet defending their colony world of New Eden. The ships appeared as tiny specks compared to the massive Krathos warships. The largest human vessel was barely a quarter the size of their smallest support craft. Supreme Commander, Nexera began, her scales shifting to a cautionary shade of blue. While their technology appears inferior, our intelligence suggests their tactical capabilities shouldn't be. Their tactical capabilities. Vazix interrupted with a bark of laughter that caused several junior officers to flinch. They cluster their ships like frightened prey animals. Their weapons are based on crude projectiles and plasma containment fields that wouldn't threaten a Krathos mining vessel. We are the inheritors of the Ancient One's technology. We have conquered 17 species across 3 spiral arms. These humans, he gestured dismissively at the display, they are barely worth the energy our weapons will expend. The human fleet consisted of roughly 300 ships arranged in a defensive sphere around New Eden. Their largest vessel, designated as their flagship, was transmitting an open communication signal. Vazix had been ignoring it for the past hour, enjoying the psychological warfare of letting them wait. Perhaps now I shall hear what these primitives have to say, he announced, finally activating the communication channel. It should prove amusing. The holographic display shifted, revealing the human female in a crisp white uniform. Her dark eyes held steady as she gazed at Vazix, showing none of the fear he had expected. "I am Admiral Chenwei of the United Earth Defense Force," she stated calmly. "You have entered restricted space and approached a sovereign human world with an armed fleet. State your intentions." Vazix let out another laugh, this one deeper and more theatrical. "Admiral Chenwei, I am Supreme Commander Vazix of the Krathos Empire. My intentions are simple. Your species will submit to Krathos rule, or we will demonstrate the consequences of defiance. Your ships are tiny, your technology primitive, and your defenses laughable. Submit now, and we may find use for your kind as servants." Admiral Chen's expression remained unchanged. "Supreme Commander, we have no intention of submitting to any foreign power. I strongly advise you to withdraw your fleet. This is your only warning." "A warning?" Vazix's scales rippled with amusement. "From ships that looked like they were assembled in a primitive orbital workshop. Your largest vessel would fit in our primary landing bay. What possible threat could you pose to the might of the Krathos Empire?" "Size isn't everything, Supreme Commander," Chen replied evenly. "Neither is the appearance of technology. This is your final opportunity to withdraw." Vazix raised all 4 arms in an expansive gesture of dismissal. "I tire of this dialogue. Your species clearly needs a demonstration of true power. Target their flagship. Low-yield weapons only. I want them to survive long enough to witness their own insignificance." The massive Krathos warships began moving into attack formation, their golden hulls gleaming as energy readings spiked across their weapon systems. The human fleet remained in their defensive position, making no attempt to flee or reposition. "Their formation hasn't changed," Nexera reported, her scales now shifting to a deeper blue of concern. "They're maintaining position despite our weapons lock. Supreme Commander, this behavior doesn't match any of our tactical predictions." "Because they know resistance is futile," Vazix declared. "Fire when ready. Let's show these humans the difference between their toys and real warships." The Eternal Dominion released a brilliant beam of energy that cut across space toward the human flagship. Admiral Chen's image disappeared from the communication display just before impact. The beam struck the human vessel squarely and passed straight through it. What? Vasix leaned forward, his scales darkening with anger. Report, sir. Nexera's voice was tight with sudden tension. The entire human fleet, their holographic projections. Our sensors are being scrambled. New contacts appearing. Everywhere. Space seemed to ripple as hundreds of human ships appeared from what looked like tears in the fabric of reality itself. They were indeed smaller than the Krathos vessels, but they moved with impossible speed and precision, their formations fluid and unpredictable. Impossible. Vasix snarled. Their technology level couldn't possibly. Multiple weapons locks. Nexera shouted. They're using some kind of quantum-entangled targeting system we've never seen before. Our countermeasures are useless. The first salvo from the human fleet didn't come from energy weapons or crude projectiles. Instead, thousands of tiny objects swarmed toward the Krathos ships. As they watched in horror, these devices attached themselves to their hulls and began interfacing with their systems. They're nanite clusters, Nexera reported, her scales now pale with fear. They're rewriting our shield frequencies faster than we can adapt. Sir, we need tow. The rest of her warning was cut off as the real attack began. The human ships moved like a single organism, their smaller size allowing them to execute maneuvers that would have torn larger vessels apart. They sliced through the Krathos formation with surgical precision, their weapons perfectly synchronized to strike through the gaps created by their nanite swarms. Vasix watched in stunned silence as 3 of his support ships succumbed to the assault in less than a minute. The humans hadn't developed their technology along the same lines as the ancient ones. They'd created something entirely new, something the Krathos Empire had never encountered before. All ships, battle formations. He finally roared, but it was too late. The human fleet had already divided his forces, isolating the Krathos ships from each other with complex gravitational fields that couldn't have come from their primitive fusion drives. Admiral Chen's image reappeared on the command deck, this time accompanied by various tactical displays, showing the devastation being inflicted on the Krathos fleet. Supreme Commander, she said, her voice still carrying that same calm tone. I believe it's time we discussed the terms of your withdrawal. Vasix's scales had turned almost black with rage and humiliation. The humans hadn't just deceived them. They had completely outmaneuvered the mighty Krathos Empire. Their smaller ships, far from being primitive, represented an entirely different path of technological evolution, one that prioritized efficiency and innovation over raw size and power. As he watched another of his ships fall to the human swarm tactics, Vasix realized that his empire's greatest mistake hadn't been underestimating human technology. It had been assuming that their own path of technological development was the only valid one. The humans had looked at the same universe and seen entirely different possibilities. Perhaps, he said through clenched teeth, we should discuss those terms, Admiral Chen. The battle that would become known as the humbling of the Krathos lasted less than 15 minutes. It marked the first time in their 1,000-year history that the Krathos Empire had been forced to retreat. As the Eternal Dominion limped away from New Eden, Vasix found himself doing something he had never done before, wondering what other assumptions about primitive species his empire had gotten wrong. Behind them, the human ships resumed their defensive formation around New Eden, their size no longer seeming quite so insignificant to Krathos' eyes. In the secure command center beneath New Eden's capital city, Admiral Chenwei studied the holographic replay of the battle for the 100th time. The Krathos ship's retreat had bought them time, but she knew it was only temporary. The next encounter wouldn't be so easy. The element of surprise was gone. They'll adapt, she murmured, more to herself than to the assembled military leadership around her. The Krathos aren't fools, just arrogant. We need to be ready for their response. General Marcus Santos, head of ground forces, leaned forward in his chair. The nanite swarms worked better than expected, but you're right. They'll have countermeasures next time. The question is, do we show them everything we have, or keep something in reserve? The holographic display shifted to show the current positions of the Krathos fleet. They had withdrawn to the edge of human space, but hadn't left completely. Intelligence suggested they were calling for reinforcements. Dr. Sarah Chen, the Admiral's younger sister and head of the Quantum Warfare Division, manipulated the display with practiced gestures. The quantum entangled targeting system caught them completely off guard. Their technology is based on brute force, massive energy weapons, impenetrable shields. They never considered that we might approach warfare differently. Because they're locked into their own paradigm, Admiral Chen replied. They inherited their technology from these ancient ones they keep referencing. They didn't develop it themselves, so they don't truly understand its fundamental principles. They just use what they were given. The room fell silent as tactical projections played out above the conference table. The Krathos Empire's next fleet would be larger, more prepared. Traditional military doctrine would suggest holding back some capabilities in reserve, but humanity had always excelled at thinking differently. We show them everything, Admiral Chen decided finally, but not in the way they expect. Dr. Chen, how close are we to implementing Project Mirror? Sarah's eyes lit up. The prototype is ready. We weren't planning to deploy it for another 3 months, but given the circumstances. She brought up a new set of schematics. It's risky, but it could change everything. The schematics showed what appeared to be standard human warships, but with a crucial difference. These vessels contain technology that could analyze, replicate, and improve upon enemy capabilities in real time. The Krathos based their entire strategy on technological superiority, Sarah explained. Project Mirror turns that advantage against them. Every weapon they fire, every shield frequency they use, every tactical maneuver they employ. Our ships will learn from it, adapt to it, and improve upon it. General Santos whistled low. We're not just fighting them, we're evolving during the battle itself. But the processing power required is handled by our quantum computing arrays, Sarah finished. The same technology that makes our targeting systems so effective. While they rely on brute force, we rely on efficiency and adaptation. Admiral Chen stood, walking to the massive window that overlooked New Eden's sprawling metropolis. The city's lights twinkled like earthbound stars, reminding her of everything they were fighting to protect. The Krathos believe that bigger is better, that more power is always the answer, she said quietly. They've never faced an enemy that could turn their own strength against them. Begin full implementation of Project Mirror immediately, and send word to Earth. We need every ship we can get. The next few days were a blur of activity. Ships were retrofitted with mirror technology, crews were trained in new protocols, and defensive positions were reinforced. Intelligence reported that the Krathos were bringing in ships from across their empire, the largest fleet they'd assembled in centuries. They're making it personal, General Santos observed during one briefing. We didn't just defeat them, we embarrassed them. They'll throw everything they have at us. Good, Admiral Chen replied, surprising some of her officers. The more they commit, the more they risk. And the more technology they bring to bear against us, the more Project Mirror has to work with. A week after the first battle, long-range sensors detected the arrival of the Krathos reinforcements. The fleet was massive, over 1,000 ships, including several that dwarfed even the Eternal Dominion. Supreme Commander Vazix's transmission came shortly after. His scales were darker now, his posture rigid with controlled fury. Admiral Chen, your tricks won you a temporary victory, but now you face the true might of the Krathos Empire. Surrender now, and we may still show mercy. Chen's response was calm, measured, almost pitying. Supreme Commander, I gave you a chance to withdraw completely. You chose to escalate instead. What happens next is on your hands. You dare to pity us. Vazix snarled. We are the Krathos. We wield the power of the Ancient Ones. Your tiny ships and clever deceptions cannot stand against the full might of our empire. Size isn't everything. Chen repeated her words from their first encounter. Neither is ancient technology. Something new is always being born. You're about to learn that the hard way. She cut the transmission and opened a channel to all human ships. All vessels, implement Project Mirror. Let's show the Krathos Empire what humanity does best. Adapt, improve, and overcome. As the massive Krathos fleet began its advance, humanity prepared to demonstrate that the greatest power in the universe wasn't size, wasn't ancient technology, and wasn't even raw strength. It was the ability to learn, to change, and to turn an enemy's greatest strength into their greatest weakness. The real battle was about to begin. The void between New Eden and its outer defense platforms erupted in a dazzling display of energy as the Krathos fleet opened fire. Their massive ships, arranged in an attack formation that had conquered countless worlds, unleashed weapons that could shatter moons. Admiral Chen watched from the bridge of her flagship, the Adaptable, as the barrage approached. All ships, mirror protocols active. Let's see what we can learn from their opening move. The human fleet didn't attempt to evade. Instead, the incoming energy weapons struck their shields, and something extraordinary happened. The shields didn't just absorb the impact. They analyzed it, adapted to it, and began to replicate its frequency patterns. Mirror systems at 60% comprehension. Sarah Chen's voice came through the command channel. Their weapon signatures are fascinating. The underlying principles are actually quite elegant, just inefficient. We can improve upon them. The Krathos ships pressed their attack, advancing with the confidence of a force that had never known true defeat. Supreme Commander Vasix's voice boomed across all frequencies. Witness true power, humans. Your technology cannot hope to match what we inherited from the Ancient Ones. Admiral Chen allowed herself a small smile. Match it? No. We're going to improve it. All ships. Execute Pattern Omega. Show them what we've learned. The human fleet split into smaller attack groups, each vessel's mirror systems now pulsing with acquired data. As they moved to engage, their weapons changed, transformed by the analysis of the Krathos attack. Energy beams lanced out from human ships. But these weren't mere copies of Krathos weapons. They were refined, optimized versions, channeling the same power through more efficient pathways. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, Vasix watched in growing horror as his fleet's advantages began to evaporate. Impossible. They're using our own weapons against us. Nexera, explain this. His tactical officer's scales had paled to an almost white shade. Sir, they're not just copying our technology, they're improving it. Every shot we fire, every defense we mount, they're learning from it all. Their ships are evolving during combat. A group of human vessels demonstrated this evolution by executing a maneuver that should have torn their smaller frames apart. They dove through a gap in the Krathos formation, their improved versions of Krathos weapons blazing. Where the Krathos relied on overwhelming force, the human ships struck with surgical precision. Their attacks guided by quantum-linked targeting systems that grew more accurate with each exchange. Fascinating. Sarah Chen's voice was filled with academic excitement even amid the chaos of battle. Their technology has so much untapped potential. They never experimented, never pushed boundaries. They just accepted what they were given and assumed it was the peak of advancement. The Krathos fleet's formation began to break down as more of their attacks were turned against them. Their massive ships, designed to project overwhelming power, found themselves outmaneuvered by vessels a fraction of their size, but armed with weapons that grew more lethal with each passing moment. All ships, fall back and regroup. Vasix ordered, his voice tight with barely controlled rage. Implement secondary defense protocols. They cannot have countermeasures for everything. But they did. As the Krathos ships attempted to reform their lines, the human fleet demonstrated yet another evolution. Their shields now pulsed with a hybrid energy signature, combining the best aspects of both human and Krathos technology. The mirror systems had not only learned from the enemy's weapons, but had found ways to synthesize that knowledge with existing human innovations. Your empire's greatest weakness, Admiral Chen transmitted to Vasix, is that you stopped learning. You found powerful technology and assumed that was enough. Humanity never stops learning, never stops improving. That's what makes us different. As if to emphasize her point, a squadron of human ships executed a perfectly synchronized attack run. Their weapons fire interwoven patterns that seem to defy physics, creating a cascading effect that overwhelmed several Krathos vessels' shields simultaneously. The massive ships, for all their power, found themselves crippled by attacks that grew more sophisticated with each exchange. This is impossible. Vasix raged as another of his capital ships reported critical damage. We are the inheritors of the Ancient Ones. Our technology is superior. Was superior, Admiral Chen corrected. But superiority isn't a fixed state. It's earned through innovation, through understanding, through the willingness to evolve. Something your empire forgot long ago. The battle had become a stark demonstration of two fundamentally different approaches to warfare and technology. The Krathos relied on overwhelming force and inherited power, while humanity showcased adaptation and innovation. With each passing minute, the mirror systems absorbed more data, refined more processes, and turned the enemy's strength back upon them with terrible efficiency. As his fleet continued to suffer mounting losses, Vasix faced a reality that no Krathos commander had encountered in centuries: the prospect of total defeat. His mighty warships, armed with the legacy of the Ancient Ones, were being systematically dismantled by an enemy that treated combat as a learning experience. The stars themselves seemed to witness this shifting of power, their cold light illuminating a truth that would soon reshape the galaxy. The age of the Krathos Empire's unchallenged dominance was coming to an end, brought low not by superior numbers or stronger weapons, but by humanity's endless drive to learn, adapt, and overcome. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, Supreme Commander Vasix watched his mighty fleet crumble beneath the relentless assault of an enemy he had dismissed as primitive. His scales had darkened to an almost black shade, reflecting the depth of his fury and humiliation. "Deploy the World Breaker," he commanded, his voice carrying the weight of desperate pride. "If these humans wish to see true power, then let them witness the ultimate weapon of the Ancient Ones." Nexera's scales flickered with alarm. "Supreme Commander, the World Breaker has never been tested in actual combat. Its power could be unstable. Everything we knew about warfare is proving unstable." Vasix roared. "Deploy it now, before their accursed mirror systems learn any more of our secrets." Deep within the massive flagship, ancient machinery stirred to life. The World Breaker was the crown jewel of Krathos' military might, a weapon so powerful that even the Ancient Ones had feared to use it. The massive device began to charge, drawing energy directly from subspace, its power signature causing nearby stars to flicker. Admiral Chen observed the energy readings with growing concern. "Dr. Chen, what are we looking at?" Sarah's voice was tense as she analyzed the data. "It's like nothing we've seen before. They're tapping into something fundamental, not just subspace, but the underlying fabric of reality itself. The power readings are off the scale. Can the mirror systems adapt to something like that?" "They're trying, but..." Sarah hesitated. "This technology isn't just advanced, it's different. It operates on principles we haven't encountered before. We need time to understand it." Time was something they didn't have. The World Breaker reached full power, its energy signature now visible to the naked eye as a swirling vortex of impossible colors. When Vasix spoke again, his voice carried across all frequencies, distorted by the weapon's power. "Behold the true legacy of the Ancient Ones. Let this be a lesson to all who dare challenge the Krathos Empire." The World Breaker fired. Reality itself seemed to scream as a beam of pure destruction lanced out toward the human fleet. Several smaller ships, unable to evade in time, were simply erased from existence, not destroyed, but completely removed from spacetime itself. All ships, execute Emergency Protocol Theta, Admiral Chen ordered. Dr. Chen, we need answers now. The human fleet scattered in practiced formations, but the world breaker's effect seemed to bend space itself, making conventional evasion tactics nearly useless. More ships vanished, their mirror systems unable to adapt quickly enough to this fundamental assault on reality itself. But on board the Adaptable, Sarah Chen had made a discovery. The weapon. It's not just powerful, it's unstable. They don't fully understand how it works. The Ancient Ones must have abandoned it for a reason. As if confirming her words, the World Breaker's energy signature began to fluctuate wildly. Space around the Krathos flagship distorted, reality rippling like water disturbed by a stone. Vasix, too late, realized his error. "Shut it down," he commanded, but the weapon had passed the point of control. The Ancient One's ultimate weapon was proving why they had never dared to use it. Admiral Chen saw the opportunity. All remaining ships, focus mirror systems on the weapon's energy signature. Don't try to match it. Look for the flaws, the instabilities. There's always a weakness. The surviving human vessels turned their combined analytical power toward the World Breaker. Their mirror systems, while unable to replicate the weapon's reality warping power, began to identify patterns in its instability. Sarah Chen's voice carried renewed excitement. "The weapon isn't just attacking our ships, it's damaging spacetime itself. And the damage, it's creating a feedback loop. If we can amplify that." "Do it," Admiral Chen ordered. "All ships, prepare to execute attack pattern Delta. We're going to turn their ultimate weapon into their ultimate defeat." The human fleet moved with precise coordination, their smaller size now proving advantageous as they navigated the increasingly unstable space around the Krathos flagship. Their weapons, guided by the mirror system's analysis, struck at specific points in the distorted spacetime, exacerbating the World Breaker's instability. Vasix watched in horror as his supreme weapon began to turn against itself. No, the power of the Ancient Ones cannot be defeated by these primitives. But it wasn't the humans defeating the weapon, it was the weapon defeating itself, its fundamental instability exposed and exploited by humanity's capacity to analyze, adapt, and understand. The mirror systems had revealed what the Krathos, in their blind worship of inherited technology, had never bothered to learn. The World Breaker was as much a danger to its wielder as to its targets. Reality buckled around the eternal dominion as the weapon's power turned inward. The massive flagship began to break apart, not from conventional damage, but from the fabric of spacetime trying to reassert itself. Vasix, in his final moments, finally understood the true meaning of power, not the ability to destroy, but the wisdom to know when and how to use force. The World Breaker's catastrophic failure created a spectacle that would be visible across half the galaxy. A brief, brilliant flash as spacetime snapped back into proper alignment, taking the heart of the Krathos fleet with it. When the light faded, the Eternal Dominion and dozens of its support ships were gone, leaving behind only a stark lesson about the dangers of wielding power without understanding. In the days following the World Breaker's destruction, the remaining Krathos ships hung motionless at the edge of human space, their once proud formations now scattered and uncertain. The destruction of the Eternal Dominion and Supreme Commander Vasix had shattered more than just their fleet. It had broken the myth of Krathos' invincibility. Admiral Chen stood in New Eden's orbital command center, watching the holographic display of the surviving Krathos vessels. The cost of victory was evident in the gaps where human ships should have been, each representing crews who had given their lives to protect their world. "We've received a transmission from the Krathos High Command," Sarah Chen reported, her voice subdued. "They're requesting a diplomatic channel." The Admiral allowed herself a small, weary smile. The first time in their history they've had to request rather than demand. "Put them through." The holographic display shifted to show High Counselor Xaran, the scales around his eyes bearing the pale blue markings of age and authority. Unlike Vasix's arrogance, his expression carried the weight of painful revelation. "Admiral Chen," he began, his voice carrying none of the traditional Krathos superiority. "We wish to discuss terms. Terms of surrender, High Counselor. Terms of peace," Kazuran corrected. "The loss of the World Breaker has shown me, that perhaps our understanding of power was flawed." Admiral Chen studied the ancient alien's face. "It wasn't just the weapon that was flawed, Counselor. It was the belief that inherited power is the same as earned wisdom." "Yes." Kazuran's admission seemed to age him further. "We based our empire on the remnants of the Ancient One's civilization. We wielded their tools without understanding their principles. And now we have seen where that path leads." The discussion that followed would later be recorded as the Genesis Accord, the first treaty in Krathos history that didn't involve unconditional surrender. As the terms were negotiated, something unprecedented began to emerge. A partnership. "Your mirror technology," Karen said during one session. "It doesn't just copy, does it? It seeks to understand." "That's the fundamental difference between our approaches," Sarah Chen explained. "You saw the Ancient One's technology as something to possess. We see all technology as something to comprehend, to improve upon, to evolve beyond." The implications of this difference would reshape the galaxy. The Krathos Empire, humbled but not destroyed, began a painful process of transformation. Their vast knowledge of Ancient One artifacts, combined with humanity's drive to understand and improve, led to breakthroughs that neither civilization could have achieved alone. 6 months after the battle, Admiral Chen stood on the observation deck of the newly commissioned Understanding, a ship that combined the best aspects of both human and Krathos engineering. Beside her, Kazuran watched as teams of human and Krathos scientists worked together, each learning from the other. "We thought power came from the past," Kazuran mused, "from the legacies we inherited. But true power comes from never stopping learning," Chen finished, "from being willing to admit what you don't know, and from working to understand rather than simply possess." The understanding represented more than just a technological fusion. It was a symbol of how defeat could lead to greater victory, how enemies could become teachers, and how the greatest power often lay not in the strength to destroy, but in the wisdom to grow. As the ship began its maiden voyage, carrying the first joint human-Krathos exploration mission, Admiral Chen reflected on the true lesson of their conflict. The Krathos had sought to demonstrate their superiority, and instead discovered their limitations. Humanity had sought to defend their home, and instead found a way to forge a better future. In the end, the greatest victory wasn't the defeat of the Krathos Empire, it was the birth of a new understanding. The realization that the universe's greatest mysteries weren't meant to be conquered, but to be understood. That true power didn't come from the weapons you wielded, but from the wisdom to know how and why to wield them. And as the understanding disappeared into the depths of space, carrying the combined hopes and dreams of two once-opposed civilizations, it proved that sometimes the greatest achievements come not from standing alone in supposed superiority, but from learning to stand together in the pursuit of knowledge. The war was over. The journey of understanding had just begun.